Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. Chris Biderman with me as always. And we've got a little bit of training stuff to talk about. A surprise holdout and our final position preview. But Chris, before we dive into that, talk to us about lamb chops.
Yeah, it is nothing new here in Sacramento. We're still in July. It's going to be the hottest month on record. But it probably means I've worn the most pairs of lamb chop shorts on record. Surely somebody's keeping a record.
Congratulations.
The lamb chops mesh shorts, amazing for summer. Kyle, as you're well aware, as many of our listeners are well aware, hopefully, just really stylish, really comfortable, really high quality clothing. We really appreciate them supporting the podcast for as long as they have. sglambchops.com, promo code Candlestick20 to get 20% off your first order. Go to SG Lamb Chops on Instagram. I believe they're SG Lamb Chops on Twitter as well, or I think it's called X now. But yeah, shout out to Lamb Chops. Clothing's great, comfortable, high quality. We enjoy wearing it. It's my podcasting uniform. And doing a little bit of traveling this week, going cross-country family reunion. You can bet there's going to be some lamb chops on the plane. Stay comfortable and stylish. So shout out to Lamb Chops, sglambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20.
We're also sponsored by Prize Picks. Hey, did you know these summer games are coming up? I did. I'm really excited about it. I always enjoy watching the summer games, whether it's soccer, basketball, tennis, golf. Doesn't matter. I'm all the way in. But now with Prize Picks, I'm even more excited. Prize Picks is daily fantasy. It's the number one daily fantasy sports app in America, over 5 million active users. And with Prize Picks Daily Fantasy, it's super easy to create an entry. You pick 2 to 6 players, you pick more or less on their stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. You can win like 100 times your money. That means you can turn $10 into $1,000. Yeah, it's that easy. You pick 2 to 6 players, you pick more or less on their stat projections. There's basketball. There will be football coming up, obviously. We've got pro and college. But right now, baseball, I'm dialed in. We got women's basketball dialed in. And, of course, we got the summer games coming up here in late July as well. And Prize Picks is going to have entries available for you on that. So you can watch Team USA rack up gold, and you can rack up the dollars. Again, you can make up to 100 times your money, turning $10 into $1,000. So stay locked in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks got you covered every single week. This is not like I got to check in and make sure that Prize Picks has a promotion. No, every single week. You can lower select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or you can get your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. It's awesome. It's part of the reason I love Prize Picks. It's part of the reason you will love Prize Picks. So play along with the Prize Picks app. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That is code Candlestick on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Training camp time for the 49ers. Let's talk about it. All right, before we get to our final position preview with quarterbacks, a little bit of a surprise today, Chris. Not a surprise that Brandon Aiyuk was out on the practice field. You almost nailed it, by the way. You said when I started saying that Aiyuk would be out of practice and we're looking for the first week, you said he would be out there standing towel around neck. He had towel in hand. Very, very close. If you had done a flex play on Prize Picks, that would have been a winner for you, though. Nice job. I'm giving you credit. I'm giving you credit for that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What I thought was, dare I say, fascinating, was that he wasn't wearing any team gear, right? I think I think that's pretty deliberate. It was all. I think it was a prominent athletic brand that is decidedly not lamb chops, but
just a lower quality athletic brand. Yeah, that's fine.
But it wasn't team gear, which I thought was interesting because typically even when you've seen guys holding in, you've seen them wearing at least team gear. So I think that is a little bit deliberate. But it does seem like, look, Brandon Aiyuk being there, I think is a very clear indication that something is going to get done eventually. He's not trying to get fined. And so, but the upshot from today for me, we're recording this Wednesday after the first official training camp practice, was the fact that Trent Williams wasn't there and that Trent Williams is holding out.
Yep.
And kind of a surprise. I guess not really a much of a surprise if you kind of read the tea leaves and looked at where his contract was relative to the other top tackles in the league. So it just keeps getting a little bit more difficult for the Niners to maintain every star player that they have. So we'll see how long this drags out, but certainly an interesting wrinkle to training camp. And it's particularly interesting given that I think Christian McCaffrey was in a similar boat. They handled Christian McCaffrey, I don't know when it was, earlier in July or late June. And it seems like Trent Williams you could solve the problem in a similar way, right? Guarantee more money. Our buddy Nick Wagner at ESPN has posited that you could add some, maybe money into a void year to raise that average annual salary to make him the quote unquote highest paid left tackle in the league, which is probably a title that he wants. Because when he signed his contract, I think it was what, $6,000 more than David Bakhtiari, making Trent officially the highest paid tackle on average salary in the league. And now I think he's fifth or sixth. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I would expect the Niners to get this done, but it's just going to be another headache. Seems like going into the 49ers might lead the NFL in headaches at the moment. They have a very good roster, very good head coach, good quarterback, but also a lot of headaches with training camp starting. Maybe only the Cowboys have more in terms of contractual stuff going on.
Well, the Cowboys aren't serious contenders, so it's a little bit less of a problem for them. I've got Trent Williams as no shots, just facts. I've got Trent Williams as the fourth highest paid tackle in the league on an average annual basis. But then you start getting into the guaranteed money, and he is down there at, what is that, 5, 6? So he's down there. He's the best tackle in the league. He should be making the most money. And at his age, we always talk about bites at the apple, right? At his age, he can't really be affording to go into a year or years without guaranteed money on his deal. And I don't blame him at all for trying to get this done. It's probably going to wind up being money that he would have been getting anyway. They're just going to guarantee it. And I don't blame Trent Williams. I don't blame him for not showing up. He's got kids. Day 1 of training camp, day 2 or 3 of training camp is not going to be a thing that impacts Trent Williams on the field at all. The 49ers didn't seem super worried about it today when Kyle Shanahan was talking at the podium, but he's also, not going to be like, yeah, we're panicking. So I know that it's a headache. It's not awesome, but I'm also not sitting here going, I don't know how they're going to get this done. There's just no way when they did Trent Williams' contract the way they did it that they weren't anticipating at some point after the 2023 season having to redo that deal.
And this is an example of why these contracts get more difficult and more difficult as time goes on, right? This is an example of why Nick Bosa's contract took as long as it did. This is an example of why Brandon Aiyuk, not Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk's deal is taking a while. 49ers have a lot of variables to factor in because they have so many high paid players, and they haven't even gotten a Brock Purdy contract done yet, which is probably going to cost $50 million a year starting next offseason. I have kind of an off the wall take, but it's something I think applies to just about all sports, and maybe I'm just a little bit tired of talking about salary cap stuff. Like,
I can't wait. Fire this off, please.
Can we just get rid of salary caps in sports? Can we, do we have to have constant contract negotiations, constant holdouts, hold-ins? Is there nothing more socialist than every team having to pay the same amount of money to their players? Can we stop penalizing teams for having good players? Like it happens in the NBA. It's like because the Warriors were as good as they were for as long as they were. The NBA, because so many of the quote-unquote governors were upset that the Warriors were able to get Kevin Durant through essentially some weird loophole circumstances, now has to penalize teams for having good players that they draft under contract and winning championships.
But
and
also,
the Niners are essentially in this really tough spot suddenly because they have so many good players. It's like, I'm just out on the idea, football, basketball, any other sport, where teams get penalized for having good players. That's it. I just think it's silly. I think it's dumb. We're talking about owners who basically make infinite amounts of money. Salary cap's going up. The pie is getting bigger for players. Like, why is there a salary cap? And why are we talking about this every single summer? Like, it's like all this stuff actually matters when it's just a bunch of rich people arguing about, obscene amounts of money. Like, maybe we just don't need to have a salary cap, and maybe we could have a truly democratic, egalitarian system where smart teams get the best players, they make the most money, and they can pay their players, which is what we see, in soccer around the world, which seems to be doing just fine.
Yeah, man, this is a pretty significant can of worms that could go down a bunch of rabbit holes. I think that what's happening here is you're opening the can that led to the creation of the House of Representatives and the Senate, right? In the United States when they were creating Congress, because there was an argument. The smaller states were worried that the bigger states were going to control everything because they were going to have more representatives in the House of Representatives, which is why they thought that an equal amount from every state would be more fair. And they created a compromise where they had the House of Representatives which was based on state population, and then a co-equal branch, or not a co-equal branch, but a co-equal house called the Senate, which had 2 representatives from every state. That way there was no small state versus big state discrepancy. So that's basically what you're bringing to the fore here. And I do think that there's a medium. And I think this is especially true in the NBA. But because real quick, hey, if you don't think Joe Lacob loves the aprons, where he can justify going, oh yeah, I can't do it, guys. I can't be spending that for, Kevon Looney or whoever, because the aprons, it's really going to handcuff us. I think he very much loves that. I don't think that Lacob was probably waging war against the first and second aprons in the NBA, but that's a separate thing. I am of the mind that I agree with you sort of, but I also understand the perils of that, where you're going to have teams that are become irrelevant, and you lose parity, and then it becomes a problem where it's the 49ers and the Chiefs just in the Super Bowl every year, not because they have good players, but because they just pay the most money or whatever it is. But on the other hand, I do think that if you draft a player and that player is awesome, they shouldn't count against your cap. I think there should be like a free agent budget for every team. But the 49ers, because they drafted Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk and George Kittle and Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw and pick Brock Purdy, they shouldn't have to run up against the salary cap because they drafted players too well, like they acquired. Now, on the other hand, they went and traded for Trent Williams and paid him out the ass, which they should have. But there has to be some kind of balance, right? So that's what, again, there's so many different factors at play here, but that's where I do agree with you. It sucks that teams that draft well are penalized for it ostensibly. But at the same time, you can't just have it be, oh, this owner has the most money and therefore the best team every single year because they just have the most money.
Yeah, my pushback would be I still think there would be parity.
Okay.
Like, I still think, like what's true now, the teams with the best quarterbacks go the farthest. I think that would remain true whether you have a salary cap or not. I think football, with the injuries and just the talent that comes into the league, I think there would still be a level of parity, even if you did do something super I understand this is a very off the wall and very drastic idea of eliminating the salary cap. And I might just be salty that, like, man, now we have another contract dispute to talk about right now. Because in general, like, contract disputes are pretty hard to talk about because we can only sort of guess what's going on, right? We can look at the 49ers cap situation and say, well, this is probably what the 49ers are trying to do here. And we can look at the players' contract and guaranteed salary through, third-party sites like Spotrac and Over the Cap, which are not necessarily always super accurate in terms of what the contracts look like, right? Like those in some ways can be inaccurate. So we're all just kind of guessing here, and to me it is kind of tiring, but it's also like, what are we talking about? Like we're talking about sports, we're talking about contracts, and maybe this is something the NFL wants. Like the NFL has never shied away from just really wanting discussion at all points of the calendar, and if you do have contract holdouts, or contract disputes, it's something that could be talked about as any publicity is good publicity, right? Like any conversation about Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk is ultimately good for the league because we're making content about it in July when otherwise, maybe we're talking about some tweets about Danny Gray looking good at practice on the first day without pads, right? Like,
which we'll talk about it.
Will we? I don't know.
No.
But this was kind of in jest, like kind of me just being tired of the contract conversations overall.
Yeah.
But like, I just overall, I've grown weary of the idea that you can have too many good players, especially if you're drafting these players or you're acquiring these players in a smart way, like the Niners did with Trent Williams, even though they didn't draft him.
Yeah. And with Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk, the thing I've run into, and again, as somebody who writes for a website where you're creating content 24/7, 365, writing about Brandon Aiyuk, there's only so many ways you can write, they should re-sign him, or they should be extending him. Extend him at this amount. What about this amount? Maybe this amount. Like, I don't care. It's not my dollars. They'll extend him at some amount, and then we can figure out the ramifications of what that means down the line. Same thing with Trent Williams. There's no take that the 49ers are better if Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk are not on the team. It's just very straightforward and obvious. So Trent Williams will be in camp at some point with a new deal. I think Brandon Aiyuk will be in camp at some point with a new deal. And then next offseason, we can talk about the players they're going to need to cut and how much money it's going to cost them to cut those players, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't have that much to say right now.
I think ultimately, Trent, like, just going back to Trent Williams specifically, let's
reel this in from eliminate the salary cap and get this back to Trent Williams.
This is likely Trent Williams looking at the future and looking at the fact that the Niners asked Eric Armstead to take a pay cut, right? Their longest tenured player. They're like, hey, take a pay cut. Or we're just going to cut you. And Trent Williams being like, well, I'm 36. If I'm hurt, there's a very good chance the Niners ask me to take a pay cut in the offseason. And if not, maybe flat out release me. And then my earning power is substantially less than it would be if I got a new contract right now. So, I fully understand where Trent Williams would be coming from in that scenario, which is fine. But it's just I just don't think it's necessarily good for the sport when teams are like, I understand the idea of parity, but injuries happen. Like that. Like, I think there's so much talent in the league that. And scheme and chemistry and just pure execution is so important that it's not like, you assemble the Monstars in the NFL and you're going to have one or two teams win the championship every year. I just don't think that's going to happen. It's not basketball.
No, maybe not.
Anyway, but that was a thought I had thinking about Trent Williams. Like, man, we got to do this again with another contract. Like, and it's going to dominate the offseason stuff next year with Brock Purdy. So, maybe this is just me being emotionally immature about having to talk about contract stuff, but I'm in favor of not penalizing teams for having too many good players when, it takes skill from a front office to assemble a team with a talented roster.
I need you to make a takeout video of you saying that the NFL should eliminate the salary cap.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what's funny is the 1 year that the NFL eliminated the salary cap, the 49ers basically did the thing where they just got all the best players and won a Super Bowl.
Right. That's true. 1994. Yeah, that did happen. That did happen,
Anyway.
which is like the reason why I like sports, that team in particular. So it's funny that you bring that up.
Anyways. All right. You want to do a quarterback preview?
Yeah, let's do a quarterback preview about the guy who's going to...
Can I tell you, it is so nice that the quarterback preview is about to be what it is, where it's a little bit silly and there's going to be some jokes. And we're going to talk about the merits of Brandon Allen's spot starts versus Josh Dobbs' spot starts. And we're not like, if this guy's healthy, but they have this number 3 overall pick, and Sam Darnold looked good in 6 games with the Panthers last year. It's just really nice to go into a training camp knowing that the starting quarterback is there and healthy, and there's not a competition for the starting job. This is nice. I like this.
So you're not expecting there to be reports coming out being like, Kyle Shanahan, I think people are saying he likes Josh Dobbs more than the starting quarterback. You're excited to not have to deal with that this summer?
Not until the pads come on.
Yeah, man, I think...
Hey, more likely that or Danny Gray makes a roster.
Oh, man, I don't know. I think as content creators, and I'm sure Niner fans could relate, I think we're in agreement that it's nice not to have quarterback drama. Like,
it's
real
so great.
Substantial quarterback drama.
Yeah.
It was fun for a while because of how much content it generated, but like just taking a step back and having a little bit of stability there. And like, I have to imagine Kyle Shanahan feels the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And for Brock Purdy, really sort of along those same lines, he has a full off season for the first time since coming into the NFL as a pro. Like, obviously his first season he was drafted. Rookies coming in the league always have a weird off season their first time. He tore up his elbow ligament, required surgery, couldn't throw until training camp started. And there have been reports now that he was still kind of coming back from that way into last season, despite playing at a pretty high level. So now Brock Purdy gets to, he talked to reporters today. He went to Jacksonville to do off-season stuff. He did 3D motion capture to really optimize his mechanics. Apparently,
as one does.
He's throwing with more velocity this year. We'll see how legitimate that is when when games happen. But yeah, like I think it all encompassing is just, man, there's stability here, and we'll get it. We'll get it this off season. We'll see what happens next off season with Brock Purdy's contract stuff. But yeah, like I think everybody within the organization and everyone covering the team and even fans observing what's happening with the team has to feel pretty good about like, oh man, at least there's no like Jimmy Garoppolo throwing passes on the side field. And is Trey Lance good or not? Does Kyle Shanahan actually like one of these backup quarterbacks more than, the guy they invested 3 first-round picks in? It's like, no, it's Brock Purdy's job. They think he's really good. He's played at a really high level, and that's kind of all there is to it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I love it. What's your big question at quarterback?
It's just big picture. Like, is Brock Purdy going to be an MVP candidate again? Like, is he gonna get better? Is he gonna take steps towards, solidifying himself as a top 8, top 10, maybe top 5 quarterback? I don't know. I'm not necessarily limiting him because I think he could get there with just how well he plays the position within Kyle Shanahan's offense and all the weapons that he has at his disposal. We talk about it a lot, like the difference between elite quarterbacks and sort of mediocre quarterbacks is elite quarterbacks are really, really good every year, right? Like we've seen Derek Carr be an MVP candidate, but he really only did it for 1 year. And that's the difference between him and some of the other guys who do it every single season. And so for Brock Purdy and regardless of whatever the national discourse is, but for Brock Purdy to cement himself in that status, he's got to back up what he did last year and put up similar numbers and maybe even get better in order for people to understand that, no, this guy's actually a very, very good quarterback. And despite him not being 6'5" with a rocket arm, he can still play the quarterback position at a really high level, which is what he does. He just plays it at a really high level. It's not smoke and mirrors. He plays at a really high level. Just because he doesn't look like a dude who would light up the combine or a pro day like Justin Fields did doesn't mean that he can't play quarterback at a really high level. You just watch him play football, and he plays at a really high level if you know what you're looking at. So, can he be a MVP candidate again? Because I think if the 49ers are going to be the top seed in the NFC, it's going to be with Brock Purdy putting up numbers like he did last season.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan said a really interesting thing. We talked about the TK show, his interview with Tim Kawakami, quite a bit in yesterday's pod. But he talked about Brock Purdy's responsibility to make changes at the line, like change protections at the line. And I thought his answer was really interesting. He basically says that his quarterbacks have the power to change whatever they want. When they go to the line, if you see something and you want to make a check and you want to throw it deep instead of to your what did he call it? Instead of throwing it hot, then you can. He said, quote, if you see something, you always have freedom to make something better. But he more or less said Matt Ryan learned that instead of trying to have his brain operate and knowing what blitzes are coming and what he had to change it to and where this shot they could take off of this blitz was, it was, I can just throw it to Julio Jones for 5 yards, and because of the way they're going to cover that, he's going to make it 13 yards, and it's just a lot easier to play that way. Here's the direct quote that I wanted to get to, though. He said, quote, but usually the more they get confidence in your offense and the more they see it, they're like, man, why would I waste my mind trying to fix this play? I'm just going to give it to that outlet there and let him perform. To me, that's what takes pressure off a quarterback. He doesn't have to run the whole thing. And that is why I think that Brock Purdy is just going to be an MVP candidate as long as he's in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Because I think Brock Purdy on day one understood that. I don't think there was this overwhelmed, oh my God, everything's moving so fast, because he just has an understanding and a trust of the offense that he knows where to go with the ball. And there were mistakes last year for sure that he has to clean up. I don't know how much of that was just youth still. I don't know how much of that was not having a full offseason to prepare correctly. But I do think that inexperience played at least a little part of it. And in the Super Bowl, when free rusher comes and he makes a bad throw trying to get it to, was that Aiyuk or Jennings? I forget exactly who it was. It's like, that's the kind of play that he can learn something from. And maybe next time that works out better for him. And those are the little things I think we're going to see change. Maybe he's throwing the ball with a little more velocity. I don't think we're going to notice that with the naked eye, because it's not going to be 15 miles an hour. It's going to be like a small amount where, hey, maybe that throw that didn't fit in that window now does. And I think his decision-making will be better. I think his trust in the offense will be better. I just think you're going to see a version of Brock Purdy. I don't think he's going to get worse. Because he does trust Kyle Shanahan's offense. He trusts the playmakers that are in his offense. And so you're going to see because of that, he's never going to be number 5 in the Ringers QB power rankings or whatever the fuck. But he's going to be the most efficient quarterback in the league, and he's going to throw for a ton of yards, and going to throw for a ton of touchdowns, and he's going to cut his turnovers down. And the Niners offense is going to be really good and score a lot of points. And if you're doing that, you're a good quarterback. That's the point of the sport.
Well, so that's the thing too. That's why I keep going back to, like, can you do it over multiple years, right? Because like Robert Griffin was really good under Kyle Shanahan for 1 year, and then he didn't really evolve, right? Like, the offense kind of took the league by storm. People didn't really know how to defend it until there was more of a sample size, and obviously injuries with Robert Griffin played a role in that too. But and it happened with Colin Kaepernick to a certain extent. Like, when defenses over time will adjust, and the reason why the best quarterbacks stay the best quarterbacks is because they're evolving just as much as the defenses who defend them, right? So that's the challenge I think facing Brock Purdy going forward is, as teams understand his strengths and weaknesses more and more as his sample of tape continues to grow, can he grow at the same rate, or if not more, and still be able to beat those defenses. And Kyle Shanahan's scheme will obviously help that a lot, because Kyle Shanahan's scheme evolves as well as any offensive coach in the league.
Right.
So that's what I think that's the challenge that Brock Purdy faces. But frankly, what we've seen his first 2 seasons in the league, I think I'm with you. I think he's fully equipped to continue evolving and continue to improve. I don't see any reason why he couldn't. And when the Niners drafted Trey Lance, we talked about how Trey Lance was really coming to, arguably the best situation a rookie quarterback has ever been thrown into.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's also true about Brock Purdy. Right? The situation's the same.
It's a great point.
It's just Brock Purdy was dropped into a situation where you had a roster that was ready to contend with a coach that's considered one of the best in the league. And all you had to do is just function within those parameters, and you would be really, really good. And obviously you have to get to a different level if you're going to beat Patrick Mahomes and win Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. But based on how Brock Purdy played in the Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl and his first full season as a starter in his second year in the league, I only have reason to be optimistic.
I'm with you.
It doesn't seem like this was a smoke and mirrors Robert Griffin situation where you're doing a bunch of stuff that defenses aren't prepared for. You're actually playing quarterback at a high level.
Exactly.
Which is sustainable in the long haul.
I walked away from the Jimmy Garoppolo Super Bowl in 2019 wondering if Jimmy Garoppolo is capable of playing at a high enough level to win a Super Bowl. I did not come away with that with Purdy.
Yeah.
I thought, given the circumstances, he was pretty good. Not perfect, obviously, but good enough that I'm optimistic moving forward. My biggest question is, who's the backup quarterback? I don't know. Kyle Shanahan said that Joshua Dobbs and Brandon Allen are going to split reps at the 2. And last season, Brock Purdy was healthy for the whole year, which I think is an underrated stat, given what the 49ers have gone through at quarterback. They've been to 2 Super Bowls under Kyle Shanahan, and they were both in the years where the starting quarterback was healthy for all the games, which I think is notable. But also, their recent history of keeping quarterbacks healthy is really bad. And so that backup quarterback spot, even though Brock Purdy was healthy all last year, I think it still matters. So that's what I'm watching, because there could be a scenario where, hey, they need Josh Dobbs or Brandon Allen to start 3 or 4 games. And if that's the case, then it's going to come down to training camp to see who wins that job. So that's what I'm tapped into.
That's a really good note by you.
Thanks.
The fact that the Niners have gone to the Super Bowl both seasons, they've had their quarterback fully healthy, which also ties back to Trent Williams. Which is why Trent Williams has a whole lot more leverage than Brandon Aiyuk does, seemingly.
Yeah.
So, I don't really have any strong feelings on who's going to win the backup quarterback job. I would imagine the Niners are going to keep. I would imagine the Niners are going to keep 3 guys.
Yep.
I could see either one winning. I think. I think a backup quarterback job for the 49ers is one of, if not the best backup jobs in the NFL, because you can be Sam Darnold and go get $10 million a year after having 1 season with Kyle Shanahan for, reasons that are still not entirely clear to me. But Sam Darnold parlayed 1 year with the 49ers into a $10 million contract and a potential starting job with Minnesota. So good for him. Maybe that happens with Brandon Allen or Josh Dobbs, who knows? But I think both those guys are probably good options as your number 2, and I think they both would be really good options as a number 3. So we'll see what happens. I think I trust Kyle Shanahan to make that decision at this point, but I don't have strong feelings yet after reading tweets from one training camp practice, and maybe my opinion will change in a couple weeks when you and I get down to training camp. But don't have any strong backup quarterback takes now. Maybe we'll, preseason will play itself out, and we'll.
Let me be clear
about that.
Let me be super clear. I'm not grinding tape to find out who the best player is between these 2. I just think it's the question in training camp that needs to be answered. Who's the backup, because they might have to start.
I'm not.
I just want to make that really clear that I'm not.
I'm not trying to belittle your question. I'm just saying I just don't.
Sure.
I'm not gonna pull up the Pro Football Reference pages.
You're saying
and be like, Josh Dobbs completed 1.3%.
what's our turnover worthy play rate?
Well, if you're gonna go by succession rate or success rate. Yeah. Anyways, don't have any strong quarterback takes other than I think the 49ers are in a good spot with their backups.
Succession rate is how often your team has an ROI.
Nice.
A Roy, Rookie of the Year. That's such a good fucking joke. Hell yeah.
Nicely done.
I'll do my breakout candidate first because mine's a joke and I think yours is a real one. Okay. And a good answer. Tanner Mordecai is the breakout candidate. Undrafted rookie. If they're going to have a player break out, I don't think it's going to be Josh Dobbs. I don't think it's going to be Brandon Allen. So Tanner Mordecai is a candidate. Welcome, Tanner.
He's going to be the guy who throws like some fourth quarter touchdown passes in the third preseason game against insurance salesmen, and people are going to freak out.
He is going to light up Nissan Stadium. They play the Titans in week 3 of the preseason, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I think Mordecai, best case scenario, given the history with Allen and Dobbs in the league, that he's probably ticketed for the practice squad.
But I think he got drafted into the UFL. He might just go play there.
Maybe.
I have no idea.
But who knows? I mean, we probably said something similar when the 49ers drafted Purdy.
So that's okay. Real quick. Real quick. Just so quick. That's why in my brain, Tanner Mordecai 99.999% is either on the practice squad or not at the team facility when the season starts. Mm-hmm. But Brock Purdy has forced me to keep that 0.00001% open because I was sitting there going, Brock Purdy stinks. Like he's not a good player. He's a practice squad guy. We all know this. They paid Nate Sudfeld X amount of guaranteed dollars. He's the backup. What are we doing? And then Brock Purdy was just pretty good player. So I'm leaving the door not open, but it's not locked.
Sure. So fair. My breakout candidate is not actually a player. It's Brian Griese, 49ers quarterbacks coach.
Great answer.
When he was hired, what was it, 2 years ago? It kind of raised a lot of eyebrows 2 years ago.
Last year?
No, I think it was 2 years ago.
Go on. I'll Google it. We have the technology.
It raised a lot of eyebrows, and it was one of those things where it was like, well, this guy's never coached before. You really trust him to coach quarterback? He's been really good, or at least if we're judging the results since he's 3 years.
This is his third season.
This is his third season. So if we're judging the results of Brian Griese's tenure as 49ers quarterbacks coach, we would say, man, this guy's really good with quarterbacks. Based solely on, Brock Purdy, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I have him as a breakout candidate because if Brock Purdy has another season like he did last year and the 49ers go really far and they have one of the best offenses in the league, which we all expect them to, I think Brian Griese is going to be a head coaching candidate next offseason. Because I don't know, as a quarterbacks coach and former quarterback, I mean, I don't know that he would necessarily need to be like a play calling offensive coordinator to go get a head coaching job.
You think he could just hardball that thing?
Yeah, like I think he's probably smart enough to hire an offensive coordinator or bring a 49ers assistant with him to be his offensive coordinator. And, I think that's a possibility. And if not a head coaching job, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was an offensive coordinator. But I just think that there's a chance that he, whether it's as a coordinator or as a head coaching candidate, he's going to be one of the hotter names next offseason in the cycle. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. I don't know that it's necessarily like a death knell for the 49ers because I think one of the most underrated parts about Kyle Shanahan is he's just really good at hiring assistant coaches, or he's such a good head coach that he can mask the mistakes or he can mask, shortcomings of his assistant coaches. But he also has a lot of assistant coaches leave and be successful elsewhere. So that to me would indicate that he's really good at hiring assistant coaches. So, but anyway, long-winded way of saying I think Greasy is a breakout candidate because he could be a really hot name in the coaching cycle next offseason.
Yeah, I don't. If Brock Purdy wins the MVP, then I think maybe. But I think teams are so focused on the offensive play caller or defensive mastermind that I think Brian Greasy is going to fly under the radar for a long time. And maybe he gets there eventually. But I think, although, I mean, I guess guys from McVay, quarterback coaches, get jobs all the time. So maybe. But I think if Purdy wins MVP, then I think that conversation happens.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I love the answer, though. That's a great answer.
Trying to make it interesting. Position battles, I think clearly it's for the number 2 quarterback.
Yeah.
Again, don't feel strongly one way or another. Although maybe I'll come up with a case as like a bit as like before the first preseason game. I'll like do a real deep statistical dive. And
whenever
just, like, really draw lines in the sand between Dobbs and Allen.
Whenever we go out to practice, we will hardcore chart their throws.
We should get into like a big fake argument in front of the media about which backup quarterback we like better. Look at his feet.
That would have been a sack. That would have been a sack, dude. You're going to give him an interception? He would have been on the ground. That's not on him.
Give him a left tackle. See what he does.
That's really funny. Did you watch him last year? Did you watch him last year? No. I'm not arguing. Did you watch him? It's a yes or no question. Did you watch Josh Dobbs play football? Yes or no? No. See, exactly. Thank you.
Grade for the group.
When you have an MVP candidate at quarterback, you get an A. It's really hard to find good quarterbacks. That's kind of where I'm at. The 49ers have a starting quarterback who can win them a Super Bowl. I am all in on Brock Purdy. They're going to pay him $60 million plus a year starting next year, I assume. That gets you an A in a sport where it's the most important position on the field by like a lot.
Man, that's so much money. Jimmy Garoppolo got $28 million a year in 2018, and that was the biggest contract in the league at the time.
Let me look real quick. Well, you said it was 28 a year for Jim?
It was like 28 and a half in 2018.
28 and a half would put him between Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Way down there. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 18th highest paid quarterback.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 60 would be a wild number, but I'm not ruling it out. I'm saying B+. And look, I think my feelings on Brock Purdy and the 49ers' ability to win games, I think that's pretty clear. But I think only like 3 teams have an A starting quarterback. I'm kind of great on that. Like you're Patrick Mahomes, you're Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and that's Lamar Jackson maybe, and that's kind of it for me in terms of like A's, right? Because I think there are guys who can transcend their situation, and make your team competitive. Like there are guys who can carry a bad roster. I don't know that Brock Purdy could do that yet. And fortunately for the Niners, he doesn't necessarily have to because he has a really good head coach and a really good roster around him.
And that's why he gets it. That's why they get an A for me. Because for me, this is within the context of their roster.
Yeah, and I'm not going to quibble with that. I'm giving him a B+.
If Brock Purdy wins an MVP, I'll circle back to this and be like, B+ quarterback right there.
Quarterback room. We're grading the position group. Keep in mind. Tanner Mordecai is dragging this thing down like an anvil.
You don't think that breakout candidate Brian Greasy can elevate that group? Okay, cool. Yeah, no.
No, I just think they're like three teams in the league with an A quarterback situation. That's all.
I don't
because
like
I
the
think
phrase,
Patrick Mahomes could take the 28th best roster in the league to a Super Bowl. I think.
Well, yeah, because Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the sport.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't. If Brock Purdy had the 28th best roster, the Niners are maybe a 500 team.
Okay.
Maybe. That's all.
I didn't know that that's how we were doing the position grades. We're going to have to go back and do this again. I need to regrade the 49ers quarterback room based on if they didn't have such a good defensive line in front of them.
Chris Steven Ruiz Biderman is what they're going to start calling me now.
Is Deommodore Lenoir anything more than a C cornerback if he's not playing behind Javon Hargrave? I don't think so. That's a joke.
Yeah,
Deommodore Lenoir's good.
I think we're kind of splitting hairs here, but like overall, obviously, I'm very optimistic about Brock Purdy and what he can be.
Totally. Not optimistic, but optimistic.
We'll
all right, let's get out of here. That's all we got. Position previews are done. We're going to start talking about camp now. Super excited. We'll be back next week with more pods for you. Unless, obviously, if Brandon Aiyuk or whatever. I was going to say Trent Williams signs, but we're not doing an emergency pod for Trent Williams. If Brandon Aiyuk gets his contract, though, we'll jump on here and get a pod for you. YouTube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles Podcast. Search Candlestick Chronicles. Subscribe to that channel. Hit the thumbs up on our videos. We would appreciate the hell out of that. Hit the little notification bell so you're notified when we go live, which we'll start doing more often now that the season is kicking off. And, of course, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you can, give us 5 stars. Give us a good review. We'd appreciate that, too. Now I have to sneeze.
Yep.
Didn't mute it. It's fine. Leave it in. Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.